الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So we've made the transition of this halaqah from Saturdays to Fridays and now from Fridays to Sundays. I move things around a bit sometimes for my own purposes and sometimes to allow for others who don't usually attend the halaqah to attend it, because sometimes a certain day is not convenient for people to attend. So the movement around is just for that purpose. It used to be after Maghrib, but there was a higher percentage of children that attended it, so we tried to make it before Maghrib, and now those children don't come anymore, so I'm not even sure why we're doing it before Maghrib, so I may end up putting it back after Maghrib, which is easier for me even, and probably for those who attended. But for now, today, this is what we're going to start with. The last time we did this session, I stopped prematurely because we were just about to begin talking about a topic, and I decided that if we weren't going to be able to complete the topic that within the summer, then maybe we just pause. Then when we come back in September, we start at the beginning of it. And the topic is Hadith al-Ifk, and this is right after al-Khandaq. A quick disclaimer and reminder: take with a grain of salt all of the aspects of the timeline of what I explained to you. Not because I don't know what I'm doing, but because there's a lot of difference of opinion within the scholars of Seerah, the historians and the muhaddithin and the scholars of Seerah specifically, and mufassirin, in terms of the timeline. There's always some debate about something happening, a little bit before this or a little bit before that, so it's unclear. What we know for sure, for example, within the timeline, is that Badr, Uhud, and Khandaq happened in that sequence. We know for sure that Badr was the first battle, and that Uhud happened maybe around a year later, and that Khandaq happened around another year and a half later. Everything else, and then Hudaybiyah later, and then Tabuk at the end. Those are the miles. And when I teach Seerah academically, I point out the milestones. Here are the anchor moments. We know for sure that this sequence is correct. Between them, a lot of things happen that we may not be able to say for sure that this is exactly when it happened. So depending on this book of Seerah that you're reading, or the scholar that you're listening to, you may find a slight difference in the sequence of events that is being narrated. So just as a disclaimer, in case one day you hear some other sheikh is talking and he tells the story of Hadith al-Ifk before Khandaq maybe, or then you're like, oh, the sheikh was right. No, it's just because there is the possibility that it may have happened a little bit before. Arabs were not good historians during the time of the Prophet ﷺ at all. They became much better after the Islamic Khilafah, and after ilm, after knowledge seeking became the norm of Muslims. They start to learn how to document appropriately. So we have a lot of accurate information of things that happened afterwards. But within those the years of the Prophet ﷺ's life, in Mecca even more than Medina, in Mecca it's very difficult to pinpoint events that happened in time-wise, but also in the Madani timeline as well. So where we are right now, this is post his hijrah alayhi salatu wasalam from Mecca to Medina. We've talked about Badr, we talked about Uhud, we talked about the consequences of Uhud and the aftermath. We talked about the battle of al-Khandaq. And now we're in the period between the battle of the trench and the treaty of Hudaybiyah, which is going to come very soon later. In between, around a year and a half, and this is my estimation, and this is how I understand Seerah, this is how I explain it. There's around a year and a half to 2 years where the Prophet ﷺ focused inwardly. The focus was internally, not on himself ﷺ, more upon his community, upon his ummah. Meaning, there wasn't a lot of outreach going on in those 2 years, as much as he was organizing his lines, alayhi salatu. He was cleaning up his backyard and organizing his house, alayhi salatu wasalam, by turning inwards or internally to address problems that this new Muslim community and this new Muslim nation had. And by no means was this Muslim nation some perfect utopia. No, it turned into a utopia for sure, but an Islamic utopia. So to think or assume that it's going to be perfect, no problems, no disagreements, no. There's no such thing. If there are people involved, there's going to be problems and drama and disagreements and issues. And actually learning from him, alayhi salatu wasalam, what it is that he addressed and what he ignored. And what he prioritized is actually very important for us as Muslims. We have to know. So, for example, he was extremely interested in when it came to racism and when it came to the ethicality of human equality. And we talked about that over the last two sessions. That was something that he was very interested in. He talked about hypocrisy, alayhi salatu wasalam, a lot, and the importance of if you bought in or if you're a part of it, then you actually carry your weight. Or, otherwise, this whole system won't work. And there's a few more stories that I'm going to share with you that in my estimation, happened between Al-Khandaq and Al-Hudaybiyah. But probably the most important event of all, and the hallmark of this time, of this period, was the Hadith al-Ifk, the event of what is called al-Ifk. And I explained to you kind of how it happened, because it happened on the backpack or on the return of the Battle of Bani al-Mustaliq. So there was a small battle. The Prophet ﷺ did something strategic, and I explained this a number of weeks ago. You can go back to those sessions if you want to hear the reality. Nothing really happened, meaning there was no war, there was no fighting. It was more of a demonstration of strength. A lot of incidents on the way there and on the way back happened. We talked about them, but what happened on the way back, one of the most important pieces, is that Sayyidah Aisha, al-Mu'mineen, radiyallahu anha, she lost a necklace of hers. It dropped. She went to, so people, when they're traveling in Arabia, this is the 7th century, so you're talking maybe, it was a long time ago, 1,300 years or 1,400 years ago. If you're traveling and you need to go to the bathroom, there's no en route to stop at, or Timmy's to go in, and you have to camp, and then you have to look for bushes or an area where it's secluded, so you can go and do your qada al-hajah, so you can get rid of. And men would have to choose a certain area, and then the ladies would have to choose another area, because it wouldn't be appropriate for them to go in the same area. So when they stopped, obviously people were doing their business, and Sayyidah Aisha went to do taqdi hajah and came back. When she came back, she noticed that her necklace wasn't on her neck anymore. It wasn't hers. And she tells this story, by the way. The story that I'm going to tell you today of Hadith al-Ifk is narrated in the collection of Imam Bukhari and Muslim and others through the words of al-Mu'mineen Aisha. She tells the story. She tells the story from beginning to end as she recalls it. And then there's a few other people who weighed in with what they said. That you be pulled from different sources as well. But she points out that she had taken this necklace as a loan. She had a friend of hers lent her a necklace, and she went out to do her business. She comes back; it's not on her neck, so she gets very upset because it's not hers, and it belongs to someone else. So she goes back to look for it. Now, the people who are responsible for the hawadij, so ladies used to, especially ladies who are traveling long distances, they would be on camels, but they would be in small compartments called a hudaj. So it's basically just there's a seat, it's a bit more comfortable, there's a flooring, and then the walls are from fabric basically, so that they're a little bit more shielded from the sun and from the wind and from whatnot. That was a way, is how they traveled. So the person responsible for the camel of Aisha and the other camels, he saw her coming back. So in his mind, khalas, she's here. He's doing a head count, everyone's here. But he didn't see her go back again. And Aisha says in her story, قال وكنت لم أكتنز اللحم بعد. I was not fat. رضي الله عنها وارضاها. She's telling the story when she is an older lady towards the end of her life, and she was a bigger lady at the time. And she said, back then I was a young girl and I was not big. She knew that it wouldn't be hard for the guy who's moving the camels and for the camel not to notice whether she's in the hodaj or not. Like if you're a bigger person, you'll notice if they're not there, because the camel is much more comfortable and it's not as. But for Aisha, it was easy for them to miss it. So the people get on the camels and he starts moving, and they don't notice that Aisha actually went back looking for something. She didn't say anything. She goes, she finds the necklace, she comes back. No one's left. Everyone's gone. Everyone's gone. She is in the middle of nowhere as far as she's concerned. She has no idea where she is. And she doesn't know which direction to go. It's impossible to actually catch up with, so she had to sit. She knew what was the law or what was the rule. You waited where you were. Right? Whenever you go to a big mall or with your kids, you tell them, if you get lost, just stay exactly where we left you. Don't move, because we'll come back to that same place, we'll find you. If you start wandering around, khalas, we'll never find you, never find us, and you have to go find a different family, and we'll meet in 50 years. You have to stay where you are. So Aisha knew this, so she just stayed where she was. But this was in the middle of the day, extremely hot, and she ended up sitting there for between 6 to 12 hours, depending on how you calculate or how you accept or interpret what she's saying. But she was there for a long time, and it was during the day. And this is important because it's going to affect the story in a moment. Just remember that. So she stayed there and she actually fell asleep for a little bit. Now, the Muslims always have someone who stays behind the army, just like they have someone who goes ahead of the army. There's always people who are the eyes, they call them uyun. I don't want to say the word spies because that's not really what they are, but they are guards, for the lack of a better word, and they're the intelligence. So they're in front of the army on the different sides, and their job is to kind of scout and see, is there any funny business happening around this, the movement of an army, to come back and let them know. So there's people from every direction, and naturally there's going to be one or two people who stay behind. And one of the famous Sahaba, whose job all his life was this is what he was good at. He did it in Jahiliyyah, and once he accepted Islam, he continued. Safwan ibn al-Mu'attal or al-Mu'attal radiallahu anhu, depending on which narration you accept, both are fine. Safwan radiallahu anhu, that's what he did. He would stay behind, and his job was to make sure no one's tracking the army, and also to pick up any things that get lost, or to help anyone who gets lost. So there is a system within these movements, large movements of people, to avoid someone getting left behind permanently, right? So, and Aisha knew that. She was like, I just wait. Someone will come pick me up. But obviously, you're in the middle of nowhere. There are animals in the desert. It's hot. There's no water. Yeah, and she is a bit concerned, and no one likes the feeling of being lost or being abandoned. So she's sitting there, and she falls asleep under the tree, because it goes for a long time, a number of hours. Like I said, I think it's around 12 hours or so. And Safwan was coming back, and he's carrying with him any helmets or whatever else he found that the army had dropped behind him. And he sees Aisha. قال وكان يعرفني قبل الحجاب. So Safwan is a Qurashi man who lived in, or he's not from Quraysh, but he was Sulami, but he lived in Mecca for a while, in Medina. So he knew Aisha before the Prophet ﷺ's wives performed a full hijab between them and any other visitors. Because at a certain point, there were so many people coming to the houses of the Prophet ﷺ that the ayah says, to put, in Surah, if you go to Surah Al-Ahzab, for example, you'll find that the ayah, إِلَّا مِن وَرَاءِ hijab, that you have to put a barrier. Because the house of the Prophet ﷺ is a room, it's a very small room. So people come and visit him in the room, and his wife is always there. So it wasn't always comfortable for the wives, and it happened so frequently that the Quran said, no, put a barrier now. Put like a barrier so that the wife can be more comfortable, and that men, because you don't know who's coming into your home. You don't know if it's a man who does ghad basar, who will lower his gaze and be respectful, versus a man who may not do that. So the hijab was put, and for the wives of the Prophet this was the norm. So Safwan knew Aisha from before. So he recognized her. So he came, فقال فوالله ما كلمني وإنما أيقظني استرجاعه. What woke me up was his istirja'. Istirja' is inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He came with his horse. He's on his horse. He sees her, so he gets off the horse and he walks parallel to Aisha. Aisha sitting there. So he stands this way and he goes, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He keeps on saying it until she wakes up and she notices. فقال والله ما فلا كلمني ولا نظر إلي وإنما أناخ لي الفرس حتى ركبت ثم مشى أمامي فما التفت إلي حتى وصلنا المدينة. He kept on saying إن لله وإنا إليه راجعون until I woke up, and then I came towards the horse. He brought the horse down. I got on the horse and he walked with his ahead of me until we got to Medina. Because he's a professional. This is what he does. This is all he does. This is his job. Up till now, this is very normal. This happens all the time. Like, this is not a story worth telling within the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Meaning, stuff like this happened in every battle, but it's not worth telling because why would you? It's an occurrence. It's a personal story that maybe Aisha would tell a friend of hers at some point, but it wouldn't be something that would make the books of seerah. It would definitely not be something that you're going to find in the Quran, except the fact that if you remember the stories that I told you right before our break, Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul said on the way back from this battle, right? لَيُخْرِجَنَّ الْأَعَزُّ مِنْهَا الْأَذَلُّ. He said something horrible. He said, سَمِّن كَلْبَكَ يَأْكُلْكَ. He said horrible things about the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims. Horrible things. And he started a race war almost. He almost started like a race war amongst them. And his son Abdullah ibn Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul didn't allow his father to enter Medina before he apologized, like publicly to the Prophet ﷺ for saying these words. So Abdullah ibn Ubay was livid. And somehow he saw Safwan walking with the horse behind him, and pulling the horse with Aisha on it. And he said the unimaginable. He started saying the unimaginable. He started making up stories. He started saying, well, this is not the first time. Every time Muhammad leaves the house, he comes by. What people would say. And he starts spreading these rumors and joking about it with the munafiqeen, and the munafiqeen, start spreading the rumor. You can imagine that this is absolutely devastating for a person, for a man to hear about his spouse, and for a woman. Aisha says that she was very fortunate. She was very fortunate as she got sick. كنت قد مرضت فلم أسمع. قال من لطف الله بي ورحمته أني لم أسمع. I got sick, so I didn't know what people were saying. Now, she probably got sick because she was stuck in the sun for 6-7 hours in the middle of nowhere. So she got a bit of a heat stroke or something. So it makes sense that she'd be sick for a week or so because of being abandoned for half the day. Now you can say, why did the Prophet ﷺ not notice? Well, when you're leading an army and you have people who are responsible for the Hawadij and the people in it, it's normal for you not, once you're moving, not necessarily to go check back and forth. Like it's just not a part of the system. And the Prophet ﷺ is in the masjid and he's dealing with a lot, so he didn't even know about this. It was a day or two later that the rumors grumble slowly and quietly, but they made their way through Medina, as rumors do, like a wildfire. It spread really quickly within a day. Everyone was talking, or at least most people were, unfortunately. This story is an extremely important lesson. It is immortalized in the Quran, in maybe two pages or so, for us to learn from, because it's really important for us to understand the implications of bad assumptions and spreading rumors and the integrity of women. The story is multifaceted. Like, it's not talking about one specific issue. It's actually talking about a number of social behaviors that we have to learn from. And they're talking about it, and the Prophet ﷺ hears about this. قال فاغتم رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. He became very upset. قال حتى عرف ذاك في وجهه. You could see it in his face عليه الصلاة والسلام. There's a mustashriq, I think his last name is Wilbur. I think he's German. He quotes in some of the Orientalist scholars, we call them mustashriqeen, Orientalists. They're the ones who studied Islamic history as non-Muslims. And actually their insight is important sometimes to look at, because we miss, as people who take for granted many of these stories, we miss maybe some really important pieces. And he points out that this is one of the stories where he struggles the most with in terms of the story of Muhammad. Because he doesn't believe, he's not Muslim, but this story stands out to him as a problem. It's a problem. He has no explanation as why it is that Muhammad, the moment this happened, did not take a different stance up on this issue, and did not, for example, make up some Quran to fix the problem right away. Why would he spend 30 days? Because the narrations are unanimously pointing out that at least 25 days of this rumor being talked about before إِنَّ الَّذِينَ جَاءُوا بِالْإِفْكِ عُصْبَةٌ مِّنكُمْ was revealed. For at least 25 days, if not a little bit longer. So when he talks about it, he says, I don't have a good explanation of why. Of course, the explanation is because the Prophet ﷺ does not make up the Quran, and this is wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for him, he struggles with this because it doesn't make any sense. If this is a man who is conning people, and he's fooling them, and he's making stuff up, then there's absolutely no reason for an Arab man to accept this type of rumor to be spread about his wife and just wait. He was the leader of the city. If he wasn't going to take stance religiously by providing revelation to end the rumor, then he could have taken a political stand or a legal one. Like, as the lawmaker of the land and the authority of the land, he could have made a law. He could have changed. He didn't. This is the important part of the story, that he never did any of that, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's perfection of someone who is avoiding conflict of interest. Like, we all know what conflict of interest is, and if you don't, I will talk to you about it a little bit as we move along in the story. But conflict of interest is something that you're going to run into within your life many times. You're going to run into this problem a lot. It's going to happen where you are expected to be unbiased. You're expected to be objective and to be fair, but you hold a stake in this matter. Meaning there's an outcome that you prefer, that benefits you. And you have the ability to tilt the balance towards the outcome that you want, right? And that piece is going to, when you run into that, it will examine and test your integrity. It will test your istiqamah in your life for sure when you're put in that situation. And this was the ultimate test of istiqamah for the Prophet ﷺ, in my opinion. Out of all of the tests that he went through in his life, I think this was the one that proves to me, at least as a young Muslim who was just reading the books and figuring out how he wanted to feel about Muhammad ﷺ. To me, this incident, it changed because the way he played it, no, he was aware back then of what conflict of interest was. And he refused to allow his status as a prophet or his status as the leader to interfere with a social problem that's happening that is absolutely affecting him. That is absolutely affecting him and his wife. And it's not that he's a participant in this problem. He is the target of the problem. The whole issue is him and his wife and his reputation. SubhanAllah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's an amazing thing. She got sick, so she didn't know what was happening. تقول ولا يريبني شيء. I love this sentence of hers in Bukhari. إلا أنه كان يدخل علي فيقول كيف تيكم. كيف تيكم is a way to speak to ladies. How are you? ولا أجد منه ذلك اللطف الذي أعرفه. So, and nothing. I was not suspicious of anything really as I was sick, except that he would come and visit me, alayhi salatu wasalam, to see how he was doing. And he would sit there and ask me, how are you doing today? But I didn't feel the same degree of passion and empathy that I'm used to, the lutf. Like, he was always very tender with me and very kind, and I didn't find the exact... قال فأقول لعله مهموم. And to myself, I say he's probably just, he has a musibah he's dealing with somewhere else or some problem. So I would say that I didn't really think much of it. This is literally her words in Bukhari. I urge you to go back and look up the hadith. It's easy to find online today, yani, with the blessings of AI. You can find the hadith and you can easily read the whole thing and listen to her words. قال ولا يريبني من ذلك شيء فأقول مهموم. It didn't make me suspicious, but it was the only thing that was off during that period, is that he would come and sit and talk to me, and he wouldn't say much. She's used to him coming alayhi salatu wasalam and chatting with her and laughing, and he would just say, how are you doing? Just see how she's feeling, and he wouldn't say it much. And she would feel she wasn't getting the same amount of tenderness that she's used to from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's all, because of how devastating this was for any man, really. It's not specific to an Arabian man. For any man, for a rumor to be spreading about his wife, about the integrity of his wife. The concept of zina is it's one of the worst kabair. Some scholars will argue it's worse than murder. I don't think that's accurate, but this is how much of a problem it is that some scholars will argue. They will make an argument that it's worse than qatl. Because qatl ends with the death of one person. This ruins families and relationships and societies forever and ever. I don't think it's correct, but I'm just saying that that's how much of a problem this is. So for your spouse to be accused of fornication or adultery, it's very hard. So for him, alayhi salam, he was carrying a burden that he never thought he was going to carry. He's someone who he lives off the cleanliness of his reputation, right? Like when you think about him, alayhi salam, not a lot of money, never really in a position of power, doesn't care about the status. All he really had in his life was his reputation, who he was as a person. So what hurt him really all throughout his life is what the people of Mecca would say about him, Majnoon and Sahir and Kadhab and all these other stuff that would make up about him. It hurt him because he lived all his life with honesty, with integrity, with trustworthiness, and now they're saying about him the things they know that he would never do and he never did. And this is another example. This is something that Aisha would never do, at least. But he's hearing it. It's normal for a man to start wondering: did I miss something? Did she somehow make a mistake? Now he's conflicted. He never said anything to her. He couldn't. He found it too difficult to bring this up to his wife, and she was sick. So he just came and asked how she was doing, and this story brings out the humanity of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam for me, as a person, as a human being who it's a very fascinating one, and I hope I don't bore you with the details of it. But if you contemplate it and you think about it, you try to put yourself in his position, alayhi salatu wasalam. He's a prophet and he's a leader and someone, and he knows who it is who is spreading this about his wife. So what does he do? How do you do? So Aisha says that a few days later, or maybe a week or 10 days later, when she started, meaning I felt a little bit better. فأردت أن أخرج لحاجتي. She wanted to go out to the bathroom. فخرجت معي أم مصطح. Mistah is a friend of hers, a lady from Quraysh. So they would walk together towards because when they go at night, قال وكنا لا نخرج للتبرز إلا ليلة. They would go out for their business at night because it's a better, and there's a specific place for them. قال وهذا قبل الكنف. Aisha in the hadith of Bukhari, she starts pointing out, this is before we started building bathrooms closer to homes, because back then having a bathroom closer to the home, they didn't have the tools to make sure that didn't make the whole neighborhood stink. So they had it farther away. But later on, they were closer. During the time of Umar, for example, when Aisha was around, they started digging. They had tools. They dug really deep holes. So the hammamat were closer to the homes now. It was easy. The lady didn't have to go walk for 10 minutes to do her business and come back at night. So she's walking with Mistah, and they're talking. And Mistah قال فعثرت بردائها. A piece of her garment gets caught under her foot, and she goes and she almost falls. So as she's falling, she says, "Ta'isa Mistah." Ta'is means, may he be punished, or may. The Arab, when they want to make dua against someone, they'll say, "Ta'isa fulan." That's how you. And Mistah is her son. Mistah ibn Athatha is her son. And Mistah is min Ahl Badr. Is a guy who fought during the Battle of Badr. And the Sahaba and their respect and their reverence for the people who were there for Badr. So Aisha, she gasped. يا مصطح ما تقولين? What are you saying? أتدعين على ابنك وعلى رجل من أهل بدر. You're making dua against your son and a man who went for Badr. ما شأنك? This is not appropriate. You should not say that. فقالت هذا لأنك لا تعرفين ما قال. That's because you don't know what he said. And of course, that's the time Aisha found out what the people of Medina have been talking about for the last 10 days. تقول she fainted. Now Aisha says, and when I heard it, I fainted. She's woken up and she goes back to her house. Now she understands. Now she knows why the Prophet ﷺ is quiet when he comes in. He just asks how she's doing and طمن عليها, and he sits quietly. She doesn't find the same. She knows because he's been dealing with that, and now she feels cheated. This story, I think I've spoken to a few of my brothers in the past. Like I never know if I should tell it if the audience is young. But I decided that it's something that you should listen to. You should learn, because there are a lot of aspects of human relationships and spouse-based relationships as well, and their experience of women within societies and men as well. And Aisha felt cheated, and she felt betrayed that she didn't know about this. No one told her that the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell her. She held that against him, that he didn't say anything ﷺ. Now you could say, well, it's not appropriate. No, now we're speaking about the Prophet ﷺ as a husband, as a human being who was stuck, who is put in a position of difficulty, who is put in a position where he is in pain. He's in pain and he's not sure what but he's trying to make sure that he is impartial, that he has no conflict of interest in the way he deals with it, that he does not accuse her of anything, but at the same time he does not dismiss anything. So he's stuck. But for a wife, this is a different experience. You're my husband. قال فعدت إلى البيت فوجدت رسول الله. I go home and the Prophet ﷺ is at home. فقلت أتأذن لي أن أمرض في بيت أبي وأمي. I want to go and be at my parents' house tonight. I want to stay until I'm better. Like I'm sick, I want to go stay with my parents. قال فأذن لي. Of course, you're welcome to. قال فذهبت إلى بيت أبي وأمي. She goes to her parents and she collapses. She collapses, and the father, Abu Bakr, begins crying right away. Abu Bakr is a man of great status and integrity. Abdullah ibn Abi Quhafa, Abu Bakr was very famous, by the way. Probably more famous than the Prophet ﷺ was when he became Prophet ﷺ. Abu Bakr was من نسابة العرب, meaning he was amongst the people who knew all of the lineages of the Arabian tribes. This was a big deal. This is like وزارة الهجرة والجوازات. If you have the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and you need someone who can find out where this person comes from, where this person lives. This is the man. You go to Abu Bakr. He knows everyone, and for him, he carried a certain degree of status, and now people were speaking about his daughter that way. And imagine his dilemma. They're saying that his daughter did something horrible, and she is the wife he gave. She's the wife of the Prophet. How does he even? Once I entered and I told them, are people actually saying this? My father collapsed. Ruman, her mother, فتقول لي ما لا عليك يا ابنتي. She was the rock during this story. Like she was a strong lady who held it all together within this household. فقال لا عليك يا بني فإنه ما من امرأة جميلة حسناء يحبها زوجها ولها ضرائر إلا قيل فيها مثل ما قيل فيك. Don't worry, this always happens whenever there's a young, pretty lady who is married to a powerful man who loves her, and there are other people involved, and they will say things about her like this to try and ruin the relationship. It is the story of the human race. So Ruman is trying to calm her daughter down, and Aisha is just تقول فمرضت من ذلك الخبر, and I became sick because of this. Because of the rumor, not because of what قال فأبكي حتى قلت يحترق كبدي. I cried so much for the next 2 weeks until I thought my liver was going to burn out. I was going to die. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep. But she didn't want to see the Prophet ﷺ. Like imagine for this time, she wasn't seeing her husband ﷺ. So he understood what was going on. So how is the Prophet? This is Aisha's story. So how is the Prophet ﷺ going to deal with this rumor that's being spread about his wife? He is now between being a leader, between being a prophet, and between being a husband, a human being, someone saying something about his wife. So his approach was not to ask, and Jibreel is not coming with anything, by the way. Jibreel is not anywhere to be found. Usually there's wahi, not for those 30 days. No wahi at all. The first question the Prophet ﷺ would ask Jibreel if he saw him is, you have to clear what this is hell. I need clarification. But Jibreel didn't show up. So ﷺ has to figure out a strategy how to deal with this. He can't he can't make a law and say the next person who says something, I will pull his tongue out and cut it. He could have made a law. You say one more word about this, I cut your tongue. Khalas, we're done. No one say a word again. And he can execute Abdullah ibn Salul right in the middle of Medina and crucify him right there. And khalas, we're done. No one will ever do this again. But there's a conflict of interest there. He's using his position as statesman to clean his slate. Does that sound familiar to any of our neighbors to the south? Maybe want to look into this as well. When you're a statesman, you have to be, conflict of interest is a big problem because you have the ability to basically wipe any slate clean. So what he did was, he started asking people. He started seeking testimony. He started seeking testimony about Aisha and about Safwan. So he started to speak to people. So he spoke to Ayman, Barak al-Habashiyya, his nanny back in the day, and the wife of Usama. And he spoke to Usama, and he spoke to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and he started to speak, and Umar ibn Khattab, he started to speak to the people, asking for, هل رأيتم منها شيئا? Have you seen anything that makes you suspicious of him or of her? Like, does any of you, فيقولوا فتقول والله ما نعلم إلا خيرا. We only know good things. He asked his wives, Zainab radiallahu anha, and Salama radiallahu anha, and Hafsa. He would ask them, هل رأيتن منهن هل رأيتن منها شيء? Have you seen something from her in behavior? فتقول أحمي. This is what they would say. أحمي سمعي وبصري. I protect my eyes and my ears from hearing anything bad or seeing anything. I've never ما علمنا منها إلا خيرا يا رسول الله. Yes, we are. We didn't always get along. But this is where we draw the line. No, we never heard. There's nothing like that from her. She wouldn't. This is not something she would do. Radiallahu anha. He would ask Sayyidina Usama bin Zayd. Usama would say the same thing. Ya Rasulullah, ma alimna minha illa khayran. He would ask Sayyidina Ali. So Ali radiallahu anhu's answer to the Prophet alayhi salatu was a little bit different. And this, I believe, was where some degree of disagreement between her and Aisha stemmed. Even though he didn't say anything rude, but he didn't say what Usama said. فقال يا رسول الله إن الله لم يضيق عليك ولكن سل الجارية تصدق القول فإن أخبرتك أنها لم ترى منها شيئا فصدقها. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, if this is causing you so much grief, because he was looking at the Prophet ﷺ's face, like, if this is causing you so much grief, then you don't, Allah subhanahu does not force you to keep all of your wives. You can do whatever you need to do to feel better. But ask al-Jariya. Al-Jariya is one of the younger ladies who would serve Aisha or lived with Aisha. There was a young lady, I can't remember her name. She lived with Aisha. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, ask her. Because she'll know, she's with her all the time, so she'll know if she was some suspicious. Whenever she tells you, Ya Rasulullah, believe her. So he went to her and he asked the Jariyah, and the Jariyah said the same thing. ما رأيت منها إلا خيرا ولا أعلم منها إلا أنها يعني تأكل اللحم يوم كذا عند أهلها وقليلة. So the lady actually gave criticism of Aisha, but not on that front. She said, oh, she's her daddy's daughter. She's her daddy's spoiled. She doesn't wake up early and to take the meat out and prepare the day. She goes to her parents to have futur because they'll take care of her. That was the that was the girl's criticism of Aisha, that she sleeps in, she goes over to her parents and they take care of her, and she doesn't really do much. She's looking at her, she's not working as hard as she should, but nothing to do with her ird. See, the problem with the story is to spread a rumor about someone's ird. Ird, and I'm just pause here just for a moment, just to kind of explain the meaning of the word. Ird in Arabic is usually, the way we understand it, or we choose to understand it, is usually the reputation of a woman. But the word ird means integrity. Your ird is your integrity. So is your reputation in general, not just that which is related to your wife or your daughter or your sister or your mother. It's your reputation in general. That's why one of the five basic goals of preservation in Islam. So Islam is geared towards preserving 5 things. It's here to preserve your aql, your sobriety, and your intellect, and your ability to think freely. It's here to preserve your freedom of belief, your freedom of speech, your deen, so you can believe whatever you want, you can make whatever choice you want, the deen. It's here to preserve your wealth, your mal, which is, it's here to preserve your life, al-haya, your ability to live, and not to be, and it's here to preserve your ird, your reputation, your integrity. Because without these 5, there is no such thing as a functional society. And there's no such thing as a human being who can live within a society that doesn't have these, that do not guarantee his rights of all 5, right? And this is what Islam is geared for. So ird is one of them. So for someone to say something about someone else's ird is a big deal. And we're going to recite the verses in the Quran that talk about what should happen for someone who allows himself to, he or she, to say something about the integrity of a woman's reputation or of a family. This is horrible. Be very careful. Sometimes we become a bit loose if we don't like the people. And there's a wave of criticism of this family. We'll just ride the wave and maybe say a few things. And be careful. Be careful. Everything you say, this is going to come back. And he would ask Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, what do I do? I love the best answer of all time is Sayyidina Umar. So listen to what he said, رضي الله عنه. قال يا رسول الله من زوجكها? Who commanded you to marry her? فقال الله. فقال أو تظن أن ربك يدلس عليك? You think your Lord would cheat you on that? Give you a wife that would do something like that? فقال لا. Does he not know this, alayhi salatu wasalam? Of course he does. He's looking for, he's drawing testimonies from people so that he can talk about this topic, so he can bring it up. Now, before I tell you what happens next, what was happening in Medina at the time? There are 4 groups in Medina regarding this rumor. There are 4 groups. There is the majority group. Majority of people. They heard the story. They don't necessarily believe it. They don't necessarily disbelieve it. And they're not saying anything. Now, at a glance, you may feel that's a good group. The Quran doesn't, just so you understand. The Quran does not see that group as a positive group and that they did the right thing. No, the Quran sees them to be at fault. Even though, when you think about it, they heard it, they didn't say anything. Not a word. But they just heard it and they didn't even believe it or disbelieve it. They didn't comment, they just heard it. You have a group that are hearing the story. They don't believe it necessarily or disbelieve it, but they don't mind passing the information along. Like they don't mind passing, keep it moving. Like Mistah, for example. Another individual who did this, and this is not to shame them, but just so that we understand that people, they were human beings. Sayyidina Hassan ibn Thabit, the known sha'ir, he didn't say something about Aisha. He just said, I heard people, he talked about it. He was like, well, that's normal. I should be able to talk about these things. No, that's the whole point of this story. That no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't be talking about certain people in front of other. That's not what you. This is ghiba. This is qadh, as as the verses will use that phrase and that term to describe it. And it's qadh. And Hassan, when he said that, Safwan radiallahu anhu heard that Hassan had brought it up in a meeting. So he went and he whacked him with his bow, and he opened, like he gave him a gash in his head basically. So Hassan went to the Prophet alayhi salatu saying, Ya Rasulullah, adani. And Safwan said, Ya Rasulullah, yaqulu fi. He's saying something, he's accusing me of something. And Safwan is dying. I always used to tell this story, or from his perspective. This poor man, who is, imagine being the person who's accused of betraying the Prophet ﷺ like this. What this poor guy, like all he did was his job. He did his job to perfection as the professional that he is. And now people are saying these things about him, and he's paralyzed. He can't. And then when he heard Hassan saying this, because Hassan he's like, well, why doesn't he go hit Mistah? See, Hassan is a poet. Hassan is the media outlet of the city. His words are very different. He can, and when he says something, even if he doesn't believe it, if he allows his tongue to say something and participate in the conversation, it's going to go much farther. So he couldn't help it. So the Prophet ﷺ told Safwan, it's okay. And then he paid Hassan for his damages. This is what he did. He didn't say, you said this about my wife? No, because again, conflict of interest. He can't. He's, at this moment when Hassan is coming to him, he is not coming to him as Aisha's husband. He's coming to him as the leader of the city. So he has to disconnect himself, alayhi salatu wasalam, from the story. And say, someone, اعتدى عليك. Someone assaulted you. Right? So in order, either there's going to be, we're going to take this to court, or he's going to pay you back for what he did to you, like damage and whatever, or you're going to hit him back. So even though Hassan was speaking about the Prophet ﷺ's wife, this tells you something. Why would Hassan even go do this if he did not know for sure that he would be treated fairly? Understand that? Like, Hassan radiallahu anhu knew that if he went to the Prophet ﷺ regarding this incident, that the Prophet would not be telling him, why did you say these words? Because he's not coming to him as the husband of Aisha. He's coming to talk to him about as the leader. So he felt very comfortable doing that. And that tells you about his integrity, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he himself said, as a person, not as the leader of the city, as a person, he's going to pay Hassan the damages on Safwan's behalf. Like he's going to fix the problem as a person, as an individual, not as the head of state. He's not going to take it from the treasury of Bayt Mal al-Muslimin. No, he's going to pay it from pocket to end the problem, because he doesn't want this to get any bigger. He doesn't want this rumor to grow. He doesn't want there to be a showdown between Safwan and Hassan. And Hassan goes ahead and writes some poetry about Safwan and brings the rumor within the middle of it, and then this story goes on until the end of time. No, he doesn't want any of that. So he paid him out of pocket. And then you have a third group. The people who actually made up the rumor. La'anahumullah. The people who actually made up the rumor, the munafiqun, Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul, and those around him, who decided that they were going to say these things about Safwan and about Aisha radiallahu anhuma. And then there's the fourth group. The fourth group that heard the story and rejected it immediately. Rejected the premise of the story, rejected the content of the story, and rejected the person who was telling the story. And the example we have of that is Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu and his wife Sayyida Ayyub radiallahu anhuma. And when this issue came up, Abu Ayyub asked Ayyub, لو كنت محل عائشة أكنت فعلت فعلها? To end this discussion of people, what they're saying. Because أسمعتِ ما قال الناس, you heard what people are saying? Yeah, I heard. If you were in Aisha's position, would you do what they say or what they're saying she did? فقالت اللهم لا. She said, no, I would never do that. فقال فعائشة خير منك. And Aisha is better than you. So Ayyub, of course, agrees, but she wants to make sure she tags him back, because that's how spousely love works. فقالت ولو كنت أنت مكان صفوان أكنت فعلت مثل فعله? If you were in Safwan's position, would you do this? فقال اللهم لا أعوذ بالله. Betray the Prophet. فقال فصفوان خير منك. Safwan's better than you. فقالوا اللهم نعم. Both of them. True. And this is the only group in the Quran that was praised. This is the only group in the Quran that is praised. All three are wrong. different levels of wrong, obviously. You can't equalize between the person who made up the rumor and the person who just heard it and didn't say anything. No, you can't make, they're not equal, but they're all wrong. And wrong, as you know, is not one level. Even though sometimes we don't see, some of our brothers and sisters don't understand that. But al-batil is not all one level. There's different levels of batil. Haqq is one thing, but al-batil, it comes in different shades. And there's horrible batil, and there's something closer to. So yes, if you have to choose between the three, then the people who listened and didn't say anything, right, they're probably the best. But the point I'm trying to make for you is that the Quran did not praise them and did not accept their stance. It didn't accept, just like, and we talked about this before, the Quran rarely accepts the bystanders, if I can use that term. The witnesses, the people who just, they don't get involved. The Quran rarely is, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ النَّارِ ذَاتِ الْوَقُودِ إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ. The people who just sat there and watched as the criminals murdered the people. The people who just sat there watching, قُتِلَ, may they be punished, may they be destroyed. This is what the Quran says about them. We know this in the Quran, that the concept of doing nothing or not getting involved is not an option. So even in this situation, it wouldn't be either. So the Prophet ﷺ got all these testimonies. He spoke to all these people, spoke to his wives. One of the ladies who, Aisha points out in her hadith, قال وكانت زينب رضي الله عنها ممن دافع عني وكذلك حفصة وأم سلمة. That she always was appreciative that Zainab bin Jahsh رضي الله عنها defended her, because Zainab was the next contender in terms of status. So Aisha was a Qurashiyya bint Abdullah bint Abi Bakr. So she had, not only was she, she also came from a very, very pure lineage and very high social status. The only lady who was at the same level of her was Zainab radiallahu anha. The Prophet ﷺ, he was a cousin, she was a second cousin. So Zainab bin Jahsh was a Qurashiyya as well. So if anyone was going to cash in on this problem, if anyone's going to use the rumor to further themselves in terms of status, it was Zainab, because this was her chance. Aisha was down. Now she just plants the dagger nice and deep, and she'll be on top, and she'll be the one who's most known to, and most closest to the Prophet ﷺ. But she didn't. Her sister did. And Aisha said, فَكَانَتْ حِمْنَةٌ مِمَّنْ قَالَتْ فِيهِ فَهَلَكَتْ مَعَ مَنْ هَلَكَ. And Himna bin Jahsh, her sister is one of the ladies who, she didn't make up the rumor, but she went and she carried the information. She spread it. She liked spreading it. And Aisha never forgave her for that in her life. And she said we don't know what actually happened to Himna in her life. And some narrations say that she didn't hold on to Islam for very long. So the Prophet ﷺ would get on the minbar, not on Jumu'ah, he would do it as a citizen. And this is something, and when I say on the minbar, I don't mean on this one, but rather in the station of speech. So the Arab would have stations for speech. Meaning if you wanted to make an announcement, you could ask for a place where you could speak, and they would call people for you. And depending on who you were as a person, either people came to listen to you, or no one did, but they would call for you, and you would be able to stand and speak. And Suq Uqal, for example, the known market of Uqal, was a space where people would be able to address the public, and it was very known to only, but it was that was selective. Only people of high status and only orators and very famous poets would be granted that. But outside of the season of the market, there are places in every city where you could go and ask for a podium to speak if you wanted to say something. Whether people came and listened to you or not, that was up to them. So the Prophet ﷺ did that. He requested a salatu jami'ah. I want to speak. And of course, people are going to come because he's Rasulullah. But he's not doing it as a khatib Jumu'ah or as the leader. So he's not speaking as a prophet or speaking as a statesman, but as a citizen of the country. فَقَالَ قَدْ بَلَغَنِي وَبَلَغَكُمْ مَا قِيلَ فِي أَهْلِي. You have all heard that which is being said about my family. وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَعْلَمْ مِنْ أَهْلِي إِلَّا خَيْرًا. And I only know good things about my family. وَإِنِّي سَأَلْتُ الْقَوْمِ فَلَمْ يَقُولُوا فِيهَا إِلَّا خَيْرًا. And I asked people. I went around asking, and no one had anything to tell me that was not khayr about her. وَإِنِّي لَأَعْلَمُ الرَّجُلِ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ مِنْهُ إِلَّا خَيْرًا. I know the man, and I know nothing but good things. وَلَمْ يَدْخُلْ عَلَيَّ عَلَى أَهْلِي إِلَّا مَعِي. And he's never, ever come to my house unless I was with him. Like he never entered my home without me being present. وإني لم أسمع منه عنه إلا خيرا. And people have never said anything bad about him. فمن ينصفني أو من يعذرني ممن يقول فيه أهلي ما يقول. Who can help fix this problem for me? Who can get me my right back? My right of integrity from the person or the people who are saying these things about me and my family. So one of the leaders of Al-Aws got all upset, and he stood up and he said, Ya Rasulullah, murna, أخبرنا من الرجل. Tell us who exactly this is. فإن كان منا ضربنا عنقه وإن كان من الخزرج ضربنا عنقه. If he is from our Aws, from us, then off with his head. And if he's from the Khazraj, also off with his head. No, he shouldn't have said that. Because a person on the other side from the Khazraj got all upset. فقال لا والله لا تضربوا عنقه. You wouldn't touch the person from our tribe. فلو كان منك لم تحب ذلك. If he turns out to be from your side, you're not going to like him being executed. فما بالك تقول. And then the guy said, no, if he's saying this, then we'll do it. And then they start yelling. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم دعوها بدعوى الجاهلية وأنا بين ظهرانيكم. He repeated that which he had said a couple of months before. Are you going to bring Jahiliyyah back into this when I'm still here? فقال انصرفوا لا حاجة لي إليكم. خلاص, go home. I don't want anything anymore. I don't want your help. I don't want what I asked for. I don't want what I asked for. خلاص, go home. But Ya Rasulullah, who is it? خلاص, I don't want it. You're not ready yet to take on this task. This incident, or what happened, there were so many things that occurred socially and psychologically and ethically that made the actual experience very rich in terms of lessons that were learned, which is why the verses in Surah An-Nur, which is why the surah that this story exists in is called the Nur. It's called the enlightenment or the light. Why? The reason it's called that is because this surah, when it came in and it talked about all of the mistakes that occurred during this event, it's as if it removed the darkness that they were living in and brought them to the light. Here's how you should be. Not like this. This is how you should be. And that transformation and the contrast between how they were or how they were thinking or how they were used to living. I grew up in rural Middle East. We haven't really evolved from this yet. I lived there. We're still living in the pre-Hadith al-Ifk era. People talk all the time. People spread rumors, people lie, people speak about others' integrity, they have bad assumptions, they're still fighting over whose family is better. Not much is, and it's very depressing because the solutions for our problems as nations is we don't need AI or a Khawaja, a white guy to come into the Middle East to tell us what to do. All of it is there, like it's all been done before. The Quran explained it very clearly and in depth. Yeah, we just want to. It's hard though. It's hard to. Bad habits die hard. Bad habits die hard, and we've picked up bad habits as Muslims. We have regressed back to our bad habits, and they're going to have to die hard. Meaning, radical change is in order. Radical change is scary and it's difficult and it's unpleasant, and it means you lose people on the way, and it means that some aren't welcome at certain places, which is hard. It's just a hard thought even to entertain. And as someone who runs masajid and stuff, it's not even something I'm willing to entertain, but there's really no other way. This story, at the end of it, when we read together the verses, probably next week, when we read the verses in the Quran that talk about it, you see the Quran is very decisive. The Quran, go home today. Take Surah An-Nur. Don't read the first page, because it's all fiqh. I'll talk to you about it later. Just turn the page and start reading from the top of that page. And read for a page and a half or so. But read and listen, now that you know the background of the story. So so he sends people home. He is probably at his lowest, alayhi salatu wasalam, because he doesn't, what is he going to do? He cannot allow for conflict of interest to enter into his ethical paradigm. He will not be morally corrupt. He won't use his status as a prophet. He won't use his status as a leader to fix this problem. Yet he is being stabbed in the heart every day 100 times. People talking about this. He tried to do this the social way. He has not been able to achieve it. So he goes over to the house of Aisha radiallahu anha and her parents, and he sits there. And he asks her, how are you doing? And she says, alhamdulillah. And Abu Bakr is sitting there, this is a bad time. You can imagine this is not a fun time for this family, these people. فقال يا عائشة إنك إن كنت بريئة فإن الله مبرئك. Indeed, if you are innocent, then Allah will bring your innocence. وإن كنت قد اقترفت ذنبا فاستغفري فإن الله يتوب عليك. And if you have made a mistake, then ask Allah for forgiveness. He will grant you forgiveness. He wasn't there to, he wasn't there to threaten her and get upset. No, he's just like, if something has happened, inshallah, Allah will forgive you. He didn't even, his narrative, his tone was not a tone of a man who was willing to harm his wife for cheating or doing something. No, if you have actually fallen into a mistake, then astaghfirillah. Do istighfar and Allah will forgive you. Atuba alayki. And Aisha, you can understand. You understand where the Prophet ﷺ is coming from, right? You can understand where he's coming from in this story and what's happening. It's hard not to feel for him, and his approach is actually amazing. It's very balanced, despite the avalanche of conflicting feelings and problems that are happening. He's being very, very. But you can also understand poor Aisha's perspective. I am being accused of this, and you guys are entertaining this idea. You're entertaining this. You're even allowing yourselves to ask me that question. تقول ألا إني إن أخبرتكم أني بريئة فإنكم لن تصدقوا فقد اعتقدتم ما اعتقدتم في رؤوسكم. If I say that I'm innocent, and I am, then you're not going to listen to this because you've already allowed the idea. And not really, but that's how she's feeling. وإن اعترفت بما لم أقترف تصدقوني. And if I go ahead and I admit to something that I'd never done, then you'll all believe me. فلا أقول لكم إلا ما قال أبو يوسف. All I say to you is that which Abu Yusuf said, which is Yaqub alayhi salam. She forgot his name. She was so tense and upset that she couldn't remember his name. قال فصبر جميل والله المستعان على ما تصفون. And then she went into a room and she closed the door, and she didn't want to see anyone. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is sitting there, and Abu Bakr is sitting there, and this is a musibah. فنزل عليه الوحي عليه الصلاة والسلام. تقول أم رومان وكنا نعرف إذا نزل عليه الوحي فيعرق فينزل فيتقاطر عن جبينه كالجمان ثم يشتد عليه الأمر. We knew whenever he received wahi عليه الصلاة والسلام, because he would faint and then he would sweat heavily and he would lie there for an hour, and he would wake up عليه, and he would sit up عليه الصلاة. فعرفنا أنه وحي. This is one of the forms of him receiving wahi. So they waited for him عليه الصلاة والسلام. قال فجلس قال فمسح العرق عن وجهه, and he wiped this is 30 days. This went on for 30. This whole thing went for 30 days. If he was making this up, he could have ended it day one. If this was a tamthiliya, he could have lied down and sat up and pushed out the verses and end the problem right then and there, and saved himself 30 days of he and his wife and Abu Bakr and his wife and the Muslims going through this roller coaster of emotions and mistakes. Guarantee that any human being that could end a problem like this earlier would. No one would want to go through this more than they had to. قال أبشري يا عائشة فإن الله قد برأك من فوق 7 سماوات. Oh Aisha, good news for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you, has inaugurated you from above seven heavens. تقول عائشة وكنت أعرف أن الله يبرئني. I knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at some point will inaugurate me and He will prove my innocence. ولكني ما كنت أظن أنه ينزل في قرآنا يتلى إلى يوم القيامة. But I didn't think at all that I was worthy of the Quran being recited to the day of judgment because of my story. فأبو بكر hears the verses إن الذين جاءوا بالإفك عصبة منكم لا تحسبوه شرا لكم بل هو خير لكم لكل امرئ منهم ما اكتسب من الإثم والذي تولى كبره منهم له عذاب عظيم. I'm going to recite these verses next week, and I'm going to go through them with you because they're beautiful and they're extremely moving once you've heard the story. So Abu Bakr كبر Allahu Akbar يا عائشة قومي فسلمي على رسول الله واحمدي زوجك. يا عائشة, go and thank the Prophet and give salams to your husband. And Roman said the same thing. Go and speak to your father. And the Prophet said, تقول عائشة أما والله لا أحمدك ولا أحمدها ولا أحمد زوجي. ولكني أحمد الله الذي برأني. She was so upset. She said, no, I do not thank you, or my mother, or my husband. I only thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who granted me this. Yeah, a broken-hearted woman. A lady who felt abandoned and felt betrayed. Understand the problem? Was he upset, alayhi salatu? Not at all. Could we say that? No, of course not. This is a lady who was being accused, a lady who was being, subhanallah. All right, we're out of time. We'll end with that, inshallah. I'll comment, inshallah, about regarding the last piece of the story, and then we'll recite the verses, inshallah ta'ala, next week. Again, go and read them if you want to. They're really beautiful, and we'll talk about, inshallah, the implications and how this can benefit us. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khair wa barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح